Hey, Steve Gamache here with another Chef Knives to Go quick look product review. And what we have this time is a really cool knife. This is the Takayuki Ginsan Damascus Gyuto 240mm knife. So this is a collaboration between two of the top, or I should say a top smith and sharpener combination in Japan. You can read about it on the Chef Knives to Go product page. I've got a good description of it. But these are extremely well-crafted knives and not inexpensive, but they are unique and just exceptionally produced knives as far as the craftsmanship goes. So let's dig in and take a look. So the way these are made, they've got a center hardcore cutting steel of Ginsan, or what's known as Silver 3, Ginsanko. There's a few different names for it, but it's a fine-grained, easy to sharpen, conventional stainless steel, and it's one of the nicest conventional steels out there in terms of knife material. And it's just a really great steel. It's easy to sharpen. It gets really sharp and it holds an edge reasonably well, but it's beautiful to work with. It's almost like a carbon steel in terms of how you sharpen it. It's just really, really nice. The construction is 63 layer Damascus soft stainless cladding on either side of that hard core steel, and they've got a kind of a unique finish on it. It's not the typical like super etched type finish, so it's rather subtle and it flows into the edge core steel. It's not a super polish on it, but it's just kind of subtle and really unique and really cool looking. It's one of the nicest looking Damascus knives on the site, in my opinion, and we'll get a close-up look at it, but it's really cool. The weight and dimensions will vary a little bit from knife to knife. This particular one is 187 grams or 6.6 ounces. The edge length is about 232 millimeters on the actual cutting edge, and that's about a little over 9 inches in length of cutting edge. Overall length about 15.3 inches or just about 390 millimeters. These are definitely solid middleweight type knives with a reasonably thick spine, but great grinds, fabulous grinds. So I measured about 3.15 millimeters, or about 3.1 millimeters at the back here. Halfway down I measured about 2.6 millimeters, and maybe about 1.5 inches from the end I measured about 2 millimeters. And then you can see they've got kind of just a continuous taper, and then as you hit the grind, it tapers out to a pretty thin tip. So the tip works nicely on these. They've also ground these down, so they're pretty thin at the edge, and they've got just a beautiful, beautiful grind. That's really part of the appeal of these knives. Is Mr. Tosa's an expert sharpener, and the grinds on these are just great. They're subtle. It's not a sharp shoulder. It's just kind of a convex that kind of flows down to the edge. So it's just beautifully done. You can kind of see that here in the light, but it just flows, kind of starts in there and flows down. And so these have really good performance, nice food separation, food release. It's just kind of the magic of a grind on a knife that's a little thicker, but it has, they just work excellently with what's there to bring that down towards the edge. So it's a beautiful, beautiful job. The blade height is 48.2. That gives you a fairly wide neck, but it gives you plenty of clearance there for your fingers. The handle is just a basic octagonal magnolia or wood with buffalo horn ferrule. There's a little bit of a step there between the wood and the buffalo horn. Looks like a pretty tight glue up on the handle install. This handle is about 75 millimeter in circumference, right before the wood hits the buffalo horn, about 3 inches. And the balance point, the handles are light, so that brings the balance point up to about there, in this case near that first kanji. So definitely a little bit in front of the pinch grip, gives you definitely a weight forward balance bias on it, and a little bit of a feel that you've got some muscle in your hand there. And again, these are solid middleweight, so kind of a muscular feel to them on the board. Although they cut beautifully. Let's see, that's pretty much it for that. Let's take a look at the knife. Gonna get our beauty shot here. So the Damascus is really cool. It's a little bit more, it pops a little bit more than on the 210 I just handled for that video, but you can see the layers are really cool. You've got some spots here that almost look like fingerprints a little bit, where some of the spots where they go. It's just a neat, neat look to it. So we'll kind of get some close-ups here. You've got some etched kanji on here with the black etching on it. But there's a good look at the Damascus. On the left side of the blade, as you'd be holding it, you've got some embossed kanji. And then let's take a look at some of this Damascus on this side. So really cool look. They've got a bit of a polish to the spine. The edges on this one are a little bit sharp on the right side of the blade. Not objectionably so, but not quite as polished as the 210, but you could take a little off of that if you wanted to. On the choil area, they've got some relief on the right side of the blade. Not quite so much on the left. They really didn't relieve the left as much, but there's a little bit there as well. That could be cleaned up a little more if you felt it necessary. Most people probably wouldn't. Let's see. Out of the box edge, I would say I'd give it a good 6 out of 10. I went ahead and just put a little bit of an edge on this. It had a couple of spots that I could feel with my finger and I ran my thumbnail across it, so I went ahead and just put a little bit of a quick edge on it, and the steel sharpened up really, really nicely. Again, it's excellent steel, so it sharpened up lickety-split. I just actually used like a 1500 stone, and it sharpened up beautifully on that. Didn't put a heavy bevel on it, but just put a little bit on there to kind of clean it up. And again, it responded really well on the stones. This thing cuts great. It's beautiful. It's got great handmade character to it. Excellent grinds. Let's take a look at the edge profile on the cutting board. So here's what we look like. Just kind of a good gentle flow. Not a lot of flat towards the heel, but it just kind of rolls into the heel. So it's an excellent rocker, glide, push-pull cuts. You could do a little chopping towards the back, but it's definitely not a super flat rear. Kind of a medium aggressive belly towards the tip, so I can still get pretty darn high on here. So this will rock really well, and it will push-pull cut great. Again, not super flat towards the heel, but pretty decent all-around profile on these. So this is just quite an exceptional knife. It's got a ton of character to it. It's got just a lot of expertise into it. Beautiful grinds, kind of a subtle finish to it, but really interesting. So this is just a definite heirloom quality knife here. This is the Takayuki Ginsan Damascus Gyuto 240mm knife.